Western Cape agriculture suffered over R1 billion in infrastructure damage during recent floods. Now, the West Coast, Cape Winelands and Overberg were the worst affected. For more on this, we are now joined by Western Cape MEC for Agriculture, Dr Ivan Meyer. Thank you so much, Dr Ivan Meyer, for joining us this afternoon. Of course, that is a lot of money and infrastructure damage that occurred, of course, because of these recent floods. We know that the Western Cape has been receiving these last few weeks. But let's just talk about the costs involved here and how will this almost impossible problem, how will it be resolved?
Yes, as you rightly pointed out, we had about R1 billion damages in our initial assessment of the regions of Overberg, the Cape Winelands and the West Coast regions. These are very significant agricultural production regions, and so the damages were mainly in the area of the infrastructure, some fencing, some irrigation losses, but also loss of income for farm workers that didn't work for the last 2 weeks, and that alone amounts to the region of about R18 million. So yes, some substantive losses that we have seen, losses in orchards, the vineyards. Also, the particular season now is the citrus season, and we are a significant export region here in the Western Cape, and so these damages were quite extensive. And these are only initial assessments, and I'm pretty sure that when we do our final assessments, that it will be in excess of R1 billion.
And let's talk about those job losses or possible job losses. Is that a big concern for you at this moment? And let's also bring in seasonal workers here because they're also being affected.
Absolutely. I am concerned that our workers in that particular region have lost for the last 2 weeks a substantial amount of income. And we also know that this is the high season, this is the harvest season for our citrus farmers, because we are in South Africa the second biggest exporter of citrus fruit in the world after Spain. The Western Cape is also the biggest agricultural production export region. In fact, 55% of South Africa's primary agricultural exports comes from the Western Cape. So absolutely, yes, I am concerned about the losses that our agricultural region had, but also the loss of income for our farmers and the farm workers in those particular regions.
And let's talk about, how farmers are dealing with the situation. Have you been visiting some of the farms there? What are they saying? What are their major concerns, especially when we take a look at smaller scale farmers, because they're also losing here. But of course, our big farmers as well, they are losing at the end of the day. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw there was a drop of 10 to 15% in fruits being exported from the country. But that number, are you concerned that it could also get much higher if this problem isn't resolved?
Well, yes, I was last week on Tuesday. I visited these areas, particularly in the area of Citrusdal, where one road was washed away. Why is this important? Because that road is the link road to the N7, which is the road into Cape Town for the harbour for the export. That road was washed away, but I paid a visit, and I want to thank our Department of Infrastructure for immediately restoring the road, fixing the road. There is now a stop and go. One-way traffic is flowing from Citrusdal to the N7, which is the main road to the harbour, because we are now busy with the harvest season for the citrus industry. The farmers absolutely are concerned because they have lost many of the orchards. They have lost also a lot of fencing, but also riverbanks have collapsed. But we are now busy with the post-disaster restoration work here in the Western Cape, and I'm particularly thankful for our engineering and infrastructure people who have connected the main roads back to the local towns and the regions.
I'm just thinking now, apart from the bigger infrastructural damage that the floods have caused in the Western Cape, when you take a look at the farmers and their homes, not the farmers, the workers, farm workers, their homes have also been destroyed in these floods, because they, of course, a lot of them stay in low-lying areas where flood damage is, of course, more severe. I'm just thinking, being a farm worker, the psychological impact, on all of this, on them. Your house is damaged. Now you still need to show up for work. You don't even know if you're going to have a job for the next few months. How big of a concern is that to you?
That is one of my biggest concerns, because you must remember that many of these farmers and farm workers came out of an 8-year drought, particularly in the region of Matsikama. Immediately after the drought, they had the whole issue of the matters relating to COVID-19. Immediately after that, it was the war in Ukraine, and then it is the electricity energy crisis. So I am deeply concerned about the multiple crises and the risks that is affecting our farmers, our farm workers in those particular regions. So mental health for me is very, very important, and we will be investing in the mental health of our agri workers, because no person can take so many knocks, and it must ultimately affect your mental well-being here in the Western Cape.
Now, will you also be looking at getting some help maybe from the private sector to help alleviate this problem?
I'm particularly happy that we have already received substantive help from the private sector, from local farmers, from the community, from Gift of the Givers, who are also very active in this area, but also from the Provincial Disaster Management Center, as well as the West Coast Disaster Management Center. I have been personally in contact with the mayors of those two districts, particularly the mayor in the West Coast District, as well as the mayor in the Cape Winelands. In fact, in the next week or two, I will be visiting regions that were affected by the floods in the Cape Winelands region, and my office is in contact with the district mayor, Elna von Schlicht, in the Cape Winelands.
And just very lastly, Dr. Ivan, can we just, can you maybe just shed some light on the long-term effects on this issue when it comes to our crops especially? Are you concerned, or can this be salvaged?
Well, I am very concerned, and this is why I have approached the Western Cape Cabinet to ask that we permanently now put on the Western Cape Cabinet agenda the whole issue of climate change. In addition, we have also established a governance framework for dealing with these risks and impacts, particularly as it relates to climate change. And this morning we had a cabinet meeting here in George, and we have also discussed future plans for mitigation in terms of climate change. We have seen now 60 degrees Celsius in Spain. We have seen people lost their lives in India. So climate change is real, and the Western Cape is one of the 6 Mediterranean climatic regions in the world affecting agriculture, and we will have a hard and deep look into the impact of climate change for the next 15 years here in the Western Cape.
All right, thank you so much. Of course, that was Western Cape MEC for Agriculture, Dr. Ivan Meyer, just shedding some light on the infrastructural damage. Of course, up to R1 billion worth of damage that was caused by the recent floods in the Western Cape.